Did you know, on your Windows computer, if you hold down Control, Shift, the Windows key, and Alt and release them, you'll open up this Microsoft 365 application. And if you hold down that combination and press the X key, you'll open Microsoft Excel if you have that installed. Control, Shift, Win, and Alt W will open Word, T will open Teams, even Y will open Yammer, and L will open LinkedIn. This is apparently the Office hotkey. It's a keystroke and key combination that has some shortcuts and hotkeys that you can open that open up Microsoft Office applications, or LinkedIn being a Microsoft product. On some keyboards, there is literally an Office button or a hyper button in some variations, but it looks like Microsoft has just turned on, hey, Control, Shift, Win, Alt, and whatever modifier will still open these things just as well. This has been around for a few years, and some people knew about it, but I got to admit, I didn't know about it. I don't know about you. Can you leave me a comment? Let me know. Did you know about this thing? But I started to see some posts on social media kind of bringing this back to the surface, and I thought, that is actually kind of neat. I wonder how that all works. So I thought, you know what? Let's just open up the process monitor and see what really happens when we go ahead and press that keystroke. I'll turn off the capture mode and I'll clear this, and then I'll try to toggle this on, and then as fast as possible, hey, hit that combination on my keyboard, fire it up, and then let's see what happens here. Apparently, it looks inside the registry in the Hotkey current user hive, which means that, hey, we, as any low privilege user, Joe Schmo, could actually kind of tamper with that and play with it. We could remap that or set whatever we want for the hotkey. It looks like it goes into this classes MS Office app shell open command key, so maybe we could mess with that, but how did it know to then open up the Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365 utility? We could actually go ahead and filter on the operation that we're looking for, because we know it's going to start a process, right? We can search for process start and then see what happens. Looks like it actually fires up webviewhost.exe. So knowing that, we could just turn off our filter, kind of go back to the original results here, and then go back to the top and just Control F and search for webviewhost. See how it tracks this down. It looks like there are a couple of other application data registry keys in the Hotkey local machine. That might give us a bit of a clue, but ultimately it tracks this down and then starts to go fire it up based off of the application path. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but webviewhost.exe is not really a binary that is in your usual path. If I open up the command prompt and I try to run webviewhost.exe or just webviewhost, it's not a thing. But obviously, hey, pasting in the full command here, firing that up. Oh, it has a space in the path, so we either need to escape that within PowerShell with the backtick or pipe that to start. Well, not pipe it, but pass it in with double quotes, right? That'll fire it up just as well. So it did query that, but actually if we keep looking for it moving down in these other results here, it also looks inside of the HKCU, the current user hive again, in the app paths directory for webviewhost.exe. This doesn't have a record in the registry right now, but it still fired it up anyway, probably because it knew either to fall back to that executable that we just saw. Oh, there's another reg open in the current user hive, so maybe we could mess with that. But finally, after a whole lot of stuff, it ends up just running process create, starting the process, and then this thing fires. So if we wanted to, there are a couple things that we could play with in that array of different registry keys that we could modify as a low privilege whatever user. So the first one we saw was that current user hive under software classes MS Office app shell open command. So let's see if we can poke and play with that in the registry. I am running as a local administrator, but that is a-okay because we can still mess with the current user, and that was under software classes, and there are a lot of these, but we're looking for .ms, no, just ms, right? There it is, MS Office app here, and that doesn't have the shell open command subkeys, right? So we want shell open, and that is a structure, right? Yep, shell open command. And then if we set a default value here, could we just toggle this to calc or change it to any other executable or something that we want to run instead? Let me, clear everything in our process monitor, start this again, and then try to hit that hotkey. And there we go. Oh, cool. Now we can kind of run whatever we want here. That is slick. I feel like that's, a little bit stealthy. I don't know, maybe a little sneaky. You get to hide something in registry. So we know that calc.exe works, but can we maybe just pass in other arguments? Let me see if I can use cmd/c calc.exe. Now let's see. Oh, as just another sub command to the command prompt, let's see, will that fire cmd and then calc.exe? No. I opened up command prompt though. I don't know if you saw it, like, hey, show into the taskbar. It didn't pop up to the foreground though, which is weird. If I that again, okay, it does. Maybe just regedit is taking priority for some reason. But it didn't seem like that would work. Let me try Notepad. Is it filling in some other arguments in some strange way? Notepad.exe. We'll hit Control-Alt-T again. Cannot find the office key.txt file. Do you want to create a new file? No. Office key.txt? What is happening? If we do cmd/c calc, could I actually go back to this, but let Procmon see this, and I'll hit the hotkey to fire this up. The command prompt fires. Now let's go try to search for our CMD. There it is. This is the reg query that we saw from our staged registry key, right? Office command default. Control F for CMD again. Ooh, it tries to go to app paths, which is interesting. Doesn't go there though. That fails. Name not found. We could just filter on the like process start, right? Let's check if the operation is as we did earlier, process start, add, apply, okay. So here, we can see this. It looks like it just straight up passes the argument office key. Yeah, ultimately the process is started with another argument for office key. So that's not super duper helpful. What was this app paths though? Oh, let me remove the filter here. We saw CMD in our registry value, and then we started to search for it in app paths, which we saw a bit ago, right? But what if I actually, is that just like adding in the value that we supply here to go try and find that? Oh, and that's even with the spaces, like the arguments for calc.exe. What if I were to do like anything, whatever, with a space in between? Let me toggle this, hit the hotkey. Windows cannot find anything, which is okay, but it didn't even look for whatever, that second word that I used there. What happens with my anything? Control F for that. We see the properties that we have the value stage in the registry. Next occurrence of anything, though, is it trying to find anything.exe in app paths and then looking throughout presumably everything in the path set as the environment variable. So it does app paths first. Can we mess with it there? Software, Microsoft Windows, current version app paths. Let's go play with that. Let me use, that was software, Microsoft Windows, right? And then current version app paths. Looks like there are a couple here. We have mspaint.exe, MS Teams Update, Notepad. And these look like they have like an executable file, which was again like the web view host thing that we kind of started with. Could I create a anything? That is what it searched for, right? Oh, anything.exe. And maybe we could make that a little bit more spooky, because we could go back to the original path that we were in. Maybe we could make this run like a Microsoft Office.exe, so it blends in a little bit in some spooky, shady way, and where we fire up calc. Just go back to the simple testing that we were doing. So run calc.exe, and let's go change the class's MS Office app command to Microsoft Office. Yeah? So now this should read from this here to grab Microsoft Office, which is not in the path, so we'll look in the registry app paths for the application paths, and then calc will fire. Neat. Question is, can I go back to that other one, the current version applications app paths, right, for our Microsoft Office thing? Can I use arguments in this cmd/c calc.exe? Fire that up. Windows cannot find Microsoft Office. Interesting. Falls back. What does that do? Let me look at Procmon. Let's start listening, and then let's try to trigger this, and let's stop listening, and then let's Control F for the calc.exe. So we see it in the query value of app paths, and then it starts to look for it specifically within the path. Like you can see literally cmd space \c, it transformed that calc.exe in every single path location. So, hey, this is actually in the Microsoft documentation. Like, you can go take a look at application registrations, and you can see that these are stored in either HKey local machine, software, Microsoft Windows current version app paths, or current user, right? So that's kind of the playground that we're playing in, but we can do a couple different things there. Ultimately, this ends up being executed by shell execute x, that Win32 API function, but it will not deal with LP parameters, which means we can't really add arguments to it, which is a big bummer, because it would have been really cool to be able to stage this as like, hey, here's some fileless methodology to hide a payload and registry, and then you could do whatever you want with whatever, I don't know, living off the land techniques, persistence, post-exploitation, yada, yada, yada. But unfortunately, we can't have arguments in here, so that makes it almost useless, because we would need to have a binary that would do something, which means it will have to write to the disk and it'll have something in the file system. And if it's looking for this within the path, though, that is something that we could manipulate even as a current user, like Joe Schmo or whatever low privilege account. If we were to manipulate this PC and its profiles, like the environment variables, hey, go take a look at the advanced system settings here. In the environment variables, we could mess with the path for the current user. So let me go add some of our own thing, like a new, what is it? C Windows tasks. That's always a world writable location. Let's try and add that. Hit OK. Now, if we were to actually stage something like C Windows tasks, we could have it fire the argument that we know that it's going to try and pass to this thing, office key, right? So we could create, oh, it won't let me do that. That's kind of annoying. Let's just do it from the terminal that we have open. Let's use Notepad to open C Windows tasks office key dot bat, like a batch script or a PowerShell script. You could put an executable here, but I'd like to make this a little bit flexible. Let's use like batch. Yes, I'm totally cool with this. Let's do an @echo off. Let's do a calc.exe. I don't know, keep it simple, keep it small for now. And let's see if this will fire through all of these layers of indirection that we kind of have put together now. Office key.bat is a thing, and that is inside of our path, so it will now be able to go find Microsoft Office.exe, because if it were just going to fire and trigger CMD on its own, and not including any of the arguments we could pass to it, it will try to run and execute the Office key file as like an argument to it. So let me try this. Did that just open up another terminal? It did. Or maybe CMD won't work. What about PowerShell? Can we use PowerShell here? Hit the Windows key again. Oh, we got a calculator. Okay, so it funneled down now, and we could see this within Procmon if we wanted to. Let's try and run this again. Hit the Windows key, hit all the hotkeys, and fire up the calc. There it fires. Now we have 2 running. If I control F for office key, look, we can see process PowerShell is created after all those things that we just sort of funneled down, and office key is the argument. And because that is in our path that we could manipulate as a low privilege user, we can stage whatever we want to run. We still have to write to disk, which makes this less cool, but still a little bit neat, because at least with this script, like, you could obfuscate, you could manipulate, you could try to mask this in whatever way, you could combine some other maybe living off the land techniques or tricks, kind of cutesy if you wanted to. We could get a reverse shell if like Defender were off. I don't know, there are some interesting things we might be able to play with though. How does this look in the process tree though? Like, what is the lineage, parent and child processes? Let's open up Process Explorer and then try this again. If I full screen this, we can kind of take a look at what is happening here. Let's hit Control-Shift-Win-Alt. So we hit the hotkey and we fire our stager for command prompt, now running in the foreground. So where's the calculator? Oh, it's under service host.exe. That's kind of wonky. Even like the console that we have running, the terminal, is that this? Is that from an earlier like experiment? Yeah. Okay, so it seems like what we get to mess with and play with here is not spawned under Explorer. When we trigger it with the silly hotkey, this stuff kind of funnels underneath service host, which is running at what is that, high integrity? Yeah, we don't have access to see it right now, just as the John user. But if I trigger this thing, ultimately the calculator that fires in our subsequent process is still running as us, current John user. So I don't think we can do anything flashy with that, but maybe it's neat or odd that, hey, we can get this under service host. Cool. Just for the sake of fireworks, let's try to, I don't know, spin this up with a little bit of a reverse shell, right? Like, hey, we could see this thing in action. What if we grabbed our Kali Linux IP address? I'll use Hoke shell because it's nice, quick, and easy for us to be able to generate quick PowerShell syntax. And I do have Defender off inside of that virtual machine. Needless to say, this would pretty likely trigger. But look, let's go bring this to the side. Now, because we've staged being able to run this office key script however we want it, it is all just funneled through those silly registry keys that will fire when we hit the office hotkey, Control-Shift-Win and Alt. So if I save this, I'll hit, hey, save. And then if I hit Control-Shift-Win-Alt, command prompt fires up and the batch script is triggered and we get our reverse shell. Kind of cheesy. Obviously this window is still running, so not like stealthy by any means, but at least neat. Here it is. Check it out. We are, of course, running as the John user. There's no neato privilege escalation, but I am a little bit curious. I don't know if you could do any shady stuff with service host as the parent process. So hey, the gist of this is that we just tampered with the Microsoft Office app sort of handler, creating a shell open command and a sort of, hey, handler or for an app that we could register, or if you wanted to, any binary in here that is already in your path. And then the Microsoft Office is what we've staged as a app. Hey, it's just set for our current users' app paths with the Microsoft.exe handler, and we'll tell it to run PowerShell, which is just going to fire PowerShell with Office key as a static argument. So to kind of trigger that, hey, we got to manipulate our path in the environment variable, and we said, hey, in a world writable location, like C Windows users tasks or whatever, we can just stage a file called Office key, and then PowerShell will run that. It'll execute it. So, couple layers of silly, stupid indirection, but maybe, I don't know, that is some abstract way you might be able to hide stuff kind of half in the registry, half not. And if you wanted to, hey, of course, you could just have it run a specific binary in its absolute path in any of those other registry locations. And I don't know if you thought of it yet, but you could use something like Visual Basic Script send keys or something to automate, like, hey, having the user maybe press these Shift, Control, Win, Alt, Hotkey just to trigger this thing, right? I don't think you could actually do like a Windows or a super key hotkey modifier within Visual Basic Script in that simple, quick, and easy way. I'm sure maybe you could do that with whatever instrumentation you want in C++ or lower bindings to write something together. But you can do it with Auto IT. And Auto IT can at least give you a little bit of scripting flexibility that you could do some damage with and then even compile to an executable. That one will probably get pretty well detected because you do weird and wild stuff with specific Auto IT binaries. Like that is kind of oftentimes used for malicious, nefarious stuff, but it does give you some modifiers and allows you to use all Control, Alt, Shift, and Win keys. In fact, you could actually see all of the specific ways that you might reference a unique key. So we could use Lwin for a left Windows key and Control, Alt, and Shift. So let's try. I have Auto IT installed here, and you could download it and fire it up if you wanted to. You could execute it and compile it as an executable, but let's just do a super simple test where I'll create a new text document for, hey, you know what? Let's just open up Notepad so I can save as. But let's do send keys. I think that's the syntax we needed, right? Oh, it's just send. Okay, nice and easy. But literally, just send, and then the string, caret plus exclamation point, and then curly braces Lwin. If we save this as all file types, that way on the desktop we could call like test.au3 for Auto IT3 script. Now we have our Auto IT script, but if we wanted to, hey, we could try to compile it to an executable with Auto IT. Hey, I think we can just drag it in here, compile it, and make a test.executable. Now, of course, again, this could be shady, this could be wild, but check it out. Here is our simple small binary, test.exe. Now, with that stage, with all of our layers of indirection, it looks like all this thing does is send a couple keystrokes, but because of the stuff that we have put up in registry, we should be able to get that to fire our reverse shell callback and any other nefarious stuff that we might want. So let me double click on test, and get started, and there is our reverse shell. And look, we're back in action here. Little who am I, a little PWD, a little LS, maybe move into the desktop. Yeah, you could do whatever you wanted. Now look, I know this is cheeky, I know this is dumb. You could just as easily do this with any hotkey if you wanted to, and I don't know, whatever novelty behind it isn't there, but thought it was kind of a fun excursion and just something to play with, and maybe a little bit of a fun behind the scenes, if you will, on some of that mysterious Windows Office hotkey, Control-Shift-Alt and Windows key. Rather than open up LinkedIn or Excel, just get a reverse shell. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.